post this.
Okay. So I'm just going to bind these right now. I'm just doing one-to-one, no hierarchy. So just apply like that. I'm going to say joint geometry and apply like that. And now when I move it down, it should go through. But more importantly, when I scale it, it does that. Yeah, it just like when I was watching your example, it's hard to tell if the scale is working right because you can't see that. Now you could do a scale constraint on there as well. In the past, those were buggy. I'm probably not buggy anymore, but you burnt one thing, you never forget about it. So I have 14 years of like prior problems that have come up, so I don't forget. Like mirroring was a huge problem back in the day. It was like just didn't work right. Okay, so we have that. Now we have this system, which is exactly what you do. But if I wanted to create another one of these systems, and let's say I wanted to duplicate this, and I'm going to call this my. I'm gonna actually create the joints on here. So I'm going to hide the original one on here, like this, and this one is going to be our cut up. So this is actually not 100%. I actually am going to have to redo this in a second. So I'm going to make some joints here. I'm just going to insert some joints on this one here, like that. Okay, like this. So and this is on this system here. So I'm actually going to have to unbind these because I'm going to put them on that one. Let's say unbind. G. Okay. And I'm also going to have to cut this up, but okay. So this is going to be my left arm. This is going to be my bind on here. So this is going to be, that's actually is going to be my bind. So I want to keep that. Okay. This isn't quite what you're doing. This is like a step beyond what you're doing right now. Okay, so this is actually waste. Okay. And this is going to be my my IK system on here. Okay. So why? Well, because if I try to make an IK system on this, it's going to do something really bad. Like let's say I go and I create my IK system here, and I do my rotate plane. I go from here to here, we get that, which I don't want. So how do I take a 5-joint chain system and really have it act as a 3-joint chain system, layered? We layer the systems on top of it. Because right now, if I take this one, let's say this is just FK, and I want to do this here. Now, again, this is not completely correct because this should actually be moving with the binding chain. We're ignoring that right now. So, matter of fact, I'm actually going to delete the hand just so we don't get confused by it. I want to just isolate it. Okay, so what we can do is if I rig this here, I want this to drive the 5-joint chain system under here. Constraints. Constraints will do that. And depending upon how you do it, you can either do a parent or you can do an orient constraint on here. Since they're just rotating around, the orient constraint should be fine. It depends if I need to really lock out the translation. I will say that if I'm going to do a ribbon spine system where I could do noodle arms, we're going to have to use a parent constraint because we do need translation in there too. So let's do parent constraint since we're here. So this is my driver, and then this is my driven. This guy right here, and I'm going to go into my constraint, and I'm going to say, okay, they do have the same orientation, so I shouldn't have to do the offset on there. If it snaps, I did something wrong. Okay, so now what I'm looking for is this guy. I'm skipping over that on here. So I'm going to say this is actually my driver, and this is my driven, and that's apply, and this is my driver, and this is my driven. Technically, I don't have to do the last joint because it's there. Actually, I take that back. I probably will when I do ribbon spine. So now if I move this, it looks like it's no different. So I build the IK on this system from here to here, and ta-da! When I hide that one, see, it looks like it's no different. So that's how we blend it on here. Now it gets a little more complicated when I want to do ribbon spines and things like that because we're not doing the IK right to the 5-joint chain system. We're going to have a duplicate of a 5-joint chain system that we're going to do the ribbon spine system on, that we're going to blend and move that with on here. How many people have messed with ribbon spines? I know you have, and you have. You two have, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
It's the tongue, right?
No, and actually that would work. That would absolutely work too. It can
I've seen
be
him try to explain it to me.
right. It's pretty much what it is taking a nerve's plane and putting hair follicles on that nerve's plane. You're like, why would I do that? Because you put the joints on those hair follicles, and when you move the geometry, it warps and moves the actually on the nerve's plane, which has a perfect curve. So the point is, you could actually go through. I could go through and build a system here where I duplicate this like that, and I could just grab these joint chains and just translate them around, which is is like bad work to do that. The ribbon spine allows you to do that. The ribbon spines have systems where by moving clusters on the actual nerves plane, it has a natural fall off because a nerves plane is a mathematical curve. So you get these nice curves and bends and things like that. So that allows you to do noodle arms because you grab this. The problem is those are individual joints, not parented together. They're just floating. So how do we do an IK on that? Layers, just like this. So I'm going to show you that now. So I'm going to delete this IK system, or I'm going to delete the constraints here. Watch this. So I just deleted this. This is going to be I'm going to say my arm ribbon. Now, you'll notice very clearly on here that I don't have these rigs on here. I'm working abstractly. I'm doing that way purposely. Oh, actually, I'm going to change this way. I'm going to do my naming convention a little differently. I'm just going to put ribbon at the end here. That makes sense for me. It's easier if I do that. Because it's still the same arm. Now in this case, I do need to use the last joint on here, okay? So I have this, ribbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. That's actually, some of my viewers are probably going, that's not how the ribbon spine works. The ribbon spine is actually going to be a segment here. So you could have, like, instead of 3 joints, you could have like 5 on here and go from that. So it would be 2 segments. Well, let's just argue that this is a ribbon spine to the whole arm on that. Because the reason why, you want to be able to create an elbow. If you do a nerves plane around from the shoulder to the wrist, you're only going to be able to bend it all out as a single curve. You're not going to be able to do the sharp bend on it. Maybe you can, if you probably could finagle things around on it, but it would be harder to do that. If you have 2 planes, you have more control over the stretchiness of them, especially if you want to extend like the forearm by itself. That would be really hard to do with the actual one system. Again, where this goes on to, take the systems, strip them down, and try to understand how to apply the parts in other places. Like when we look at when we look at your RFL system, what is it really doing? How do I break that down, and how do I understand what those parts and how would I change it? You should always take tutorials and examples and then try to apply them to something they were never intentionally intended to. That will true if you really understand what they're doing. Don't follow instructions on it. That's not going to get you where you need to go, because you will eventually hit a time where you're going to cover something that has no videos on it. But then you start picking videos that have certain aspects of things that you want to learn, and then you pull those together, and they're going to be good and bad situations. It's how you react. It goes from there. That's the pretty much what you're being hired for. That's what you want to see on your videos, how you're taking these pieces and applying them together and being able to describe it. That's why I'm having you guys record videos, so I can hear you in your cadence and your voice, because you'll hear me, I don't know how to do half of these systems, but I don't worry about it. I'm just going to research part here and part there. And that's why I want you guys posting all your things you're referencing, you're finding, because it helps me because I see other things that you didn't do, and I see how you're digging. I know you guys are digging and digging and digging and digging, but the absence of people seeing it and me seeing you doing it is you're not doing it. So it goes from there. Okay, so I have this system here, and I have my binding joint chains. This is no difference here. I am going to cut this up. So let's go and grab my faces. I'm going to make sure my geometry is here. So let's just do that. I'm going to duplicate this. Mesh tools, edit mesh. These are my faces. I'm going to duplicate that. Gene. Okay. 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 So Now I got my pieces on here. You'll get an idea of it. I'm not going to do this for all of them, but now I have my joint, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, okay, let's get rid of that one. That's the one I want to get rid of. Okay, there you go. Okay, so bring back my joints, joint, geometry, bind, parent constraint, bind, joint, geometry.
I think you selected the long one instead of the short one.
I don't think so. Oh, this one here, he said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, all right. Okay. Boom, boom, bind. Okay. So, good. And I'm just going to do this whole thing on here. Okay, so that's moving. So that being case, that if I go through these guys and I stretch them in scale X, that should be moving. Oh, it's the wrong one. Whoops. I grab these guys and I scale X. Yeah, and I grab that one. It's the wrong one. Let's do that again. Okay. Boom, boom. Skin bind. Okay, I have no idea what that is, but I'm going to ignore that. And by the way, if you are doing that whole copying weight thing, it has to be exact cuts on those. If you don't, otherwise it's not. You're going to have to still do some weighting. Okay, cool. So now I got my system on here. I got my IK. I got my binding joints, and these guys should be working, and they are. Okay. So now this system here is going to be constrained right into this guy here. Okay, so just literally 1-to-1. And I'm just going to do a parent constraint. Now I should be able to do the offset turned off on here because they should be the same. So driver driven. You notice this whole time I have not talked about anything about scripting. You have to do this multiple times before you even attempt the scripting, because there's things on here, this whole path of creating all the constraints, I would script that because I'm going to make a mistake. Connecting the proxy geometry to the correct one, I've already made 3 mistakes on that. That's something I'm going to write a script for. It gets me angry. I know what things that my brain's going to run problems with. I write those down. I have a pad of paper next to me, and when I get angry, I write it down. If I'm not sure, I'll record myself talking about why I'm angry about that. And then at the end of the day, I'll listen to those and I'll re-summarize those up. Those become my tools. If I tell you, hey, what type of tools you want to build, that bad tools come from that. You should be in the heat of the moment working. That's when you come up with cool tool ideas. They don't have to be complex. Connecting a proxy to that, it's just a name at the end. Proxy, ribbon, bind. That's the only thing I'm replacing out. That's why I do that. So it's still left arm 1. And then unknown, like that. Okay, so at this point now, if I grab my ribbon joints, the whole arm moves indirectly. See? Now that should be moving. Why is that not moving? Did I not connect that? I did. Or is it maybe the geometry is not connected? Okay, so it is moving. The geometry is not connected to the right thing, so I did something stupid again. I wish to say that's on a normal thing. It is. Joint, geometry, bind. You see where I'm constantly redoing it? I'm not doing that for your benefit. I'm dumb. I make those mistakes. So sorry to break that illusion. Santa Claus is not real. The Easter Bunny doesn't exist. I make stupid mistakes just as much as you guys do. I just know that I'm going to make this mistake, so I'm ready for them. I don't get angry at them. Okay. That's why I had people actually want me to watch through the process, and I curse a lot when I work. I get angry when it doesn't do that. But I just know I'm going to make mistakes constantly. The only difference for me is I've just made more mistakes from you. There's a reason why I wear my jeans, so you don't see all the scuffs on my knees for every time I fell on the ground. Okay, so now we got our system on here. Our ribbon spine now is not the binding joints, but it might as well be because it's actually moving my binding joints. So now I got my IK system up here. For this, all I got to do is constrain into the ribbon system, and that's it. It works. Now, if I had to do clusters or controls to manipulate that, then we have to be a little mindful how we're doing that. So every layer brings more complexity into it. But if I just want to do a basic stretchy like you're doing with multiple joints, so I get more of it, I can control how much stretching is going on along the axis. That's a pretty easy system to do. So you can do 5 joints with a simple 3-joint chain that's driving that stuff on there. So in this case, the last thing I do is I say, there's my driver, here's my driven, and it's the same thing I did in the beginning. Driver, driven, same thing in the beginning. Driver, driven, same thing in the beginning. And now, when I grab those IKs, but now I can also go through and manipulate these. See? The ribbon spine would drive that stuff. So you're trying to think, but wait, if I actually put constraints right on the ribbon spine joints, aren't I deactivating from doing those joints the other way? How do I get around that? Pads. Those are not real joints. They're controls. Joints are easy to select. Remember what we did with the RFL joints? Easy to select. So we're doing joints because they are a pain in the ass to select, which in this case is a benefit to us because they're easy to do that. So in this case, I put pads above them. I do the constraints into the pads, which trickle into that. Then I can still move those systems around if that's necessary. Understanding what it's doing, understanding how the ribbon spine is actually affecting those systems. So I know I said only 2 of you guys have really messed with ribbon spines here, so it's like it's confusing for me to talk about. Actually, probably a third one you've messed with them too. But the point is that nerves plane is moving the joints, and however it's moving the joints, that's doing the offsets. So those are driving the other systems on there. It's funny when we do this and we do the IK, you're actually not constraining onto the joints like this. You're actually constraining into the actual nerves planes, because if they're these planes, you just connect into here, and those are acting as joints. I know that's talking about. The main thing is the layered systems what I'm focusing on here. Do you see how the constraints are sitting on top of each other? If I had one of these as mocap, can you see how you can constrain that in? Yes. So there's lots of different ways to blend and manipulate these things. The main thing is why we're doing this is we have a different set of joint chains from the top to the bottom. We have a 5-joint chain system here, but we only want a 3-joint chain system up here. So we need to actually do kind of a range conversion to match those up so they work. So those 3 are actually driving the 5 without actually driving all 5 at the same time, which the IK will break. You good, Harley? See, you look like the mathematical equations. I think like going over in your head. Let's break that down to the core essence. I have a base joint chain that moves my skin around every way it does. In this case, 5 joints on here. I take another joint chain above it and constrain them in, and then I rig that to move those as a 3-joint chain system to really drive my 5. That's all I'm doing here. Don't worry about ribbon spines, spline IKs, all these things. That's what's sitting on top of that system. The main thing you say, what do I have to maximally amount to move my character around? I need 5 joints. If I'm doing a Overwatch character, and he needs to do noodle arms, and to do these weird the warp bending on that, I need to have at least 5 joints on that. If it's a film character, I might need more than that. If I'm doing Elastigirl, I need a lot more than that. So I just look at what is my max amount of joints I need in that system to get the deformations. Then I put layers of systems on top of it based upon controls. Elastigirl needed a typical IK arm, but she also needed to be able to grab the system and stretch it and noodle it. Those are layers on top of it. And you just think about where they're interfacing into it. Where does all this really apply? Game rigs. Game rigs had to be the single chain system. Wait, can I put my indirect system and then constrain them into the single chain system? Yes. So ribbon spines, which are floating, which would not work in a game rig, can you put those into as a single chain here and constrain them in? Yes. Because at the end of the day, what goes into the game rig? The single chain system. We're just baking the keyframes down onto the joints when it goes down there. So this is actually a really powerful thing that allows you to do those on here. Okay, does that make sense? because I know it went off the rails a little bit there, or at least went really advanced on it. Yes, for you it wasn't, but they're new to it, so it's like,
Have
what?
you ever seen how like intricate Elastigirl's work is? Like, have you ever actually
No,
looked into it?
that's kind of they never show, but I get an idea when I look at it. I just know there's a lot of rigs in there. There's like they are rigging per scene sometimes. When there are normal dialogues in there, it's probably the base rig, but there's a lot of times where it's like when she's jumping from building to building in the first one, it's like, yeah, that's a rig. When she's a boat, that's a rig. When she's turning into a balloon and covering her children, that's a rig. So those are separate assets entirely. The character won't do that. But when she's on the phone talking and she's with with Edna and those that's a normal, because she's not doing anything really crazy on those. She's just doing dialogue. But yeah, so yeah, they never show that. That's probably very proprietary. So I've seen more of their tech stuff around it, like their hair and their auto generating of the rigs and stuff like that. They show that on the Incredible stuff and everything, where they go from there. But yeah, they've never shown that. So,
Is it
but
easier to like build separate rigs and have different functionalities for the same character, or is it better to just layer on one? Because my box right now, I think you said Elastigirl has different rigs.
mhm. It's per
So
shot. So
okay.
yeah, I would. Yeah, you might have a different rig to show off the character as you're showing like the Chrysler showing off their new car spinning around and you're showing doing things like that. You're going to want to have a general motion of how things are going to go. And then you go from, yeah, now that's why I've wanted you to storyboard your stuff out, because you will do correctives to fix little things here and there to make it look right on it. I guarantee you, Aussie, when she did her stuff, she set that up to work for that area. She was building it around to do certain types of motion. There's going to be times where her stuff was going to break. It's just, but you didn't see that, and she covered it really well. Nothing works just perfect in every situation. That's not reality. Cool. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm not sure where I'll post